So let's go back. Hopefully your audio, your tech issues are solved. Set the stage for us today, ma'am.
Well, I think to set the stage, we have to really do a compare and contrast and just juxtapose where we'd be if we were standing right here, although I probably wouldn't be standing on the White House lawn, had Kamala Harris won. You know, they would have authorized the long-range missiles, right, for use in Ukraine. They would have plowed through who knows how many more billions of dollars. That conflict would be beyond the point of return. Who knows if this country would still even be standing. In contrast, right, you have President Trump, who in about 1 month has been able to really, through a myriad of geopolitical and global affairs, been able to, I think, turn the tables and reverse course on something that I think, frankly, we didn't even know was truly possible. And I think the Ukraine flashpoint, you just sort of extended that to what's going on with Russia and Persia, is sort of the other side of the coin of that. Obviously, tonight he is expected to announce that he will be signing on to that mineral deal with Ukraine. I think we've always sort of taken the line that I think it's sort of a poison pill, or it's a dangerous trap in terms of the fact that they've destroyed Ukraine so they can rebuild it in the line of, I think, a kind of World Economic Forum globalist global government model. And when you look at the entities that are involved in the rebuilding of Ukraine, that's, of course, BlackRock and JP Morgan. They've treated it sort of as a sovereign wealth fund investment type venture. I think the fact that the United States is somehow going to be embroiled in all of that isn't necessarily, what President Trump's most loyal of supporters want. But as you've always alluded to, right, it's leadership, it's compromise. And I think we've sort of seen that play out time and time again. And I think that the theme of his speech tonight, which dovetails with so many of the guests that they've announced, that there are still some surprise guests that we'll be seeing soon, I think it really shows a reversal of the kinetic warfare that the Biden regime was waging on the American people by allowing an invasion of 400,000 people a month. Now we're actually deploying troops to the southern border. I think we've seen a reversal of information warfare, right? Whether it's the White House Correspondents Association getting kicked out, new media now having a voice in the briefing room. And I think most poignantly, we've seen the reversal of economic warfare, right? Instead of inflation being, absolutely waged against the United States and against the average American working class, of course, dovetailing with immigration policy. Now we're actually seeing whether it's the tariffs or mass investment, or frankly, even I just think continuing to sort of stop this endless flow, the just pouring out of fund after fund, aid package after aid package to Ukraine. So you're seeing a reversal, and I think it aligns quite nicely with President Trump's obviously America First agenda, but you're seeing it on full display right now. And I have to say, it's not a very happy mood right now in the briefing room. I think there's a lot of sad Ukraine diehards in there who are sad they're not going to be getting more aid packages, or I guess maybe they've just drank the Kool-Aid and they think that democracy is going to be over tomorrow.
Natalie, what's the feeling at the White House? Look, there's a world of problems. Obviously, President Trump started the kind of economic warfare part last night. He's trying to set things right. You got troops on the border. They just announced, as you said, the lowest ever. We've shut the invasion down in under 40 days, not the years they told us it would take. But what's the attitude among the staff and the people that support President Trump there and work for him every day? What's the feeling?
Well, I don't think there's probably ever been a president who's walked in, the first month or so of their administration, who's been able to walk and give a joint session address with the number of accomplishments that this administration has. And in part, it's because of, I think, the wonderful work that President Trump has done, but I also think it's because of just the absolute, very just awful deck of cards, hand of cards that President Trump was dealt right from Joe Biden. The stolen election, I guess, had diminishing returns. But I will say, I think it is interesting to sort of answer that question. Two, to look at how the other side is reacting to it. There's a mass demonstrations going on across the country today. There's a huge one going on right now outside the White House. There's obviously massive demonstrations going on at the Capitol too. They're all saying, of course, that it's spontaneous and organic. We know that that's textbook color revolution tactics in terms of the fact that they're trying to astroturf this idea that there's so much grassroots opposition to what President Trump is trying to do. We've seen this, of course, with the idea that all of these protesters that are popping up at these town halls are just, random, nonpartisan individuals. Turns out that they're being bankrolled by groups that we've really highlighted here in the War Room, groups like Move On and Indivisible. I think Black Lives Matter, a lot of these sort of swampy, shady, dark money, Arabella advisors, George Soros, esque groups are now sort of assembling outside the White House. But if you really look what their big gripe is, what they're sort of attacking this administration for, I've seen all the signs. They're attacking President Trump for being a felon, and they're saying that Elon Musk is a billionaire. They don't really have that much to hurl against this administration because I think they can't accept it. But he's actually been quite successful. And if they really want to protest against, I don't know, something as controversial as peace, which seems like in the Middle East or in Ukraine, then I guess they would really just be finally admitting how anti-humanity and pro-death that they actually are. But I think the best way to sort of reverse engineer the successes that President Trump has had is just how short the list of complaints of his largest detractors, which maybe you can overhear, they're not too far away from me, actually are.
Natalie, do you anticipate in the room tonight, there's been a lot of discussion about, and particularly on MSNBC all day, about potential disruptions by not protesters that would slip in somehow as a guest, but about actual Democratic congressmen, particularly people in the House, actually being disruptive during President Trump's address to the nation. Any thoughts of hearing from the White House or your own thoughts, ma'am?
Well, I hope that's a rhetorical question because, of course, right, I think the kind of mindset that plagues Democrats right now is that they can't normalize Trump, right? That was obviously the 2016 playbook. Now we've seen a sort of more intense and I think more akin to the sort of global color revolution tactics where they're astroturfing this idea. They're very rejective of the idea of something called anticipatory obedience. There's a historian who Rachel Maddow has on all the time, sort of undergirds a lot of MSNBC's coverage. And in his book, the concept of anticipatory obedience, right, prematurely obeying evil dictator President Trump is how this country slips from democracy to full-blown autocracy. So sort of through that paradigm, I think they then justify, if not absolutely mandate, at least from the far left flank of the Democratic Party, that they do not treat President Trump like a democratically and popular vote elected president because they can't normalize him. Otherwise, they are enabling, right, the backsliding of United States of American democracy. And I think you sort of see it on full display, right, in the social justice, ally, if you're not with us, you're against us, that whole kind of mindset. But that's now playing out on the more, I think, domestic and democracy political front. So I think that you will definitely see people stand up and try to disrupt and agitate because not just, I guess, it's their tradition and their culture, but it serves a bigger purpose. And Steve, I think signal, not noise for our audience. Though, of course, there is going to be opposition and demonstrations against him, pay attention to how much the mainstream media amplifies it. I don't know about you, Steve. Have you ever seen the mainstream media cover the fact that our audience, our posse, is always showing up at these town halls, nuking CR after CR? I don't think so. But then a group, a tenth the size of our audience, shows up, obviously bankrolled by Soros-linked groups, and suddenly they get nonstop coverage, right? They even have the small little square box in the corner of Rachel Maddow's screen trying to make it look like there's mass demonstrations everywhere. So even if there actually aren't demonstrations, I think that to sort of fit the narrative, it doesn't actually matter if anyone shows up. You're going to see a continual hyping of this idea that there is such staunch opposition to him, because then they have more, not just moral, ethical, or political justification to sort of oppose him using these outside of the system tactics. But it just helps to, I think, sort of foment the resistance, which, they're not going to give up all that easy.
Natalie, fantastic hit. What's your social media, ma'am, so people can get you between now and 8 o'clock when you rejoin us?
Natalie G. Winters on all platforms.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll see you back here at 8. Fantastic report from the White House. Our own Natalie G. Winters. Okay.